Namaste, dear all. Welcome to the second segment of our journey through the fourth adhyay of the Bhagavad Gita. And as we continue from our earlier exploration, we now enter a very deeply beautiful portion of the chapter, one that invites us to look more closely at the relationship between knowledge and action. Knowledge can illuminate the way we act, but there's also a beautiful reciprocity here. When an action is undertaken with awareness, sincerity, and right understanding, it itself can become a doorway to deeper knowledge. The Gita gently moves us beyond the idea of action as something we do. It invites us to see action as an opportunity for learning, purification, and inner awakening. When the mind is free from attachment and the fruits of action are offered with a spirit of yajna, as Dr. Bijlani shared with us in the last session, even our everyday actions can become a path towards wisdom. We are again deeply grateful to have Dr. Bijlani with us, helping us unfold these subtle teachings with his characteristic lucidity, warmth, and relevance to contemporary life. And now, my dear friends, with open hearts, attentive minds, and gratitude to the divine for this wonderful opportunity to learn, let us continue our journey. So,
Thank you, Richa, for a beautiful introduction to the topic. You called it beautiful and deep, uh, which it truly is. Yes, it is beautiful, but same time it is deep, which means that it's a little difficult to digest. And that's because it's about yajna, and yajna is normally translated as sacrifice. And by sacrifice, we mean one out of two things generally. One is the ritual in which you have a fire in the Havan Kund and you go on adding some ahuti. That is one uh, sense in which we use the word yajna as well as sacrifice. And the other is a more sort of a normal sort of way, or you can say the ordinary way of looking at sacrifice. That is somebody giving up something, although that something is dear to the person, because the person gives it up for the sake of somebody who is even more dear to the person than himself or than what he's giving up. Say if a child is not well and the child's mother gives up her sleep, she does it because the child is more dear to her than her sleep. So she's making a sacrifice. These are the two ways in which it is used, but the Gita uses it uh, in a much deeper sense. Although both these also have a grain of truth and can be related to the way the Gita uses it, uh, the these two do not go as far and as deep in the meaning of yajna as we normally understand by sacrifice. So I'll try to sort of simplify it. With that introduction, let me share the screen. So this is a continuation of the previous session in which we went up to the 23rd shloka of the fourth chapter of the Gita. And we are once again starting with the 23rd shloka for a reason, because that was the shloka in which we learnt the significance of sacrifice in enlightening action. And today's shlokas are primarily on dilating upon the concept of sacrifice. So, just to recapitulate, uh, how work in yoga can be free from the usual bondages associated with work is what we saw last time. And the usual bondages associated with work are attachment to the fruit and the sense of doership. These are the two most, the illusion of doership, that I am doing the work. Now, these are the two most common and easily sort of understandable bondages associated with work. And working in the spirit of yoga can help us be free from both these. So, Richa, you may recite this shloka with which we are starting today.
गतसङ्गस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थितचेतसः यज्ञायाचरतः कर्म समग्रं प्रविलीयते.
So the translation of this verse, literal translation, is that when a man liberated, free from attachment, with his mind, heart, and spirit firmly founded in self knowledge, does work as sacrifice, all his work is dissolved, which means that the work does not create any disturbance in him. He's working, but same time he remains totally unaffected by it, and this happens as a result of establishing the work or founding the work in self knowledge. Self knowledge, that is what we are at the deepest level. And that in turn enables the work to be done as a sacrifice. This is what dissolves the work, which means that the person is now liberated from all the bondages associated with work. Now, the concept of sacrifice is a sort of a concept of give and take. Uh, that is one of the simplest ways in which we can look at the concept of sacrifice in the Gita. We can give only because we received. For example, suppose I give my child a chocolate. Hmm? Now, I'm able to give it because I received it as a gift from somebody. Instead of having it myself, now I give it to the child. Hmm? So, I'm giving it to the child, but I could do it only because I received it as a gift from somebody. And the one from whom I received the gift of the chocolate also received it from somebody, maybe from the shopkeeper. And the shopkeeper received it from somebody else. So if we keep going back, where will we reach? We'll reach the ultimate giver, the one who did not have to take from anybody and yet had to give. Now, who is that ultimate giver? The ultimate giver is the divine. The divine doesn't have to take from anyone to be able to give because it already has everything and is everything. And in that sense, who made the real sacrifice? If sacrifice means giving, who made the real sacrifice? We are all giving whatever we are giving because we received it from somewhere. The real sacrifice, that is giving without taking anything from anywhere, the real sacrifice was made by the divine. So that's why what the divine did to create this universe was can be called the Mahayagya. So we are all participating in a miniature form in that Mahayagya by making something which looks like a sacrifice, that is giving because we received it from somewhere. Now, the work becomes sacrifice, we saw, when it is established in self knowledge. Now, what is this self knowledge in this context? The self knowledge is that we are the divine. So, we are manifestations of the divine. So, our fundamental essence, our everlasting reality, is the divine itself. We are imperfect manifestations of the divine, uh, temporary manifestations of the divine, but all the same, we are, while we are around, we are manifestations of the divine, and then since we are divine, and we received whatever we received, which then we are passing on to somebody, we received what we received is also the divine, because whatever we received is also a manifestation of the divine, because everything that exists is a manifestation of the divine. If it is not a manifestation of the divine, it does not exist. So we are the divine, we received the divine, and then we give it to somebody. The one to whom we give it is also a manifestation of the divine. So the divine receives from the divine and offers to the divine. So that is the type of self knowledge which the Gita talks about when it talks about work as a sacrifice. So, what this verse 23 is talking about is that when established in self knowledge, it cuts the knots of ego and desire. Because ego is exclusive attention on myself, and that is the result of lack of self knowledge, because self knowledge makes me realize that I am a manifestation of the divine and so is everybody else. So in that sense, that self knowledge breeds a sense of oneness rather than a sense of exclusivity, and if it does not breed the sense of exclusivity, it does not justify exclusive attention on myself, which the ego is about. And it is from the ego that the desires arise, because I want something. So uh, the desires are an extension of the ego, because most of the time what I want is not a necessity, but it in some way boosts my ego. Say I have enough clothes, but I want more clothes, better clothes, because that will in some way give me a better image. It will boost my ego. So the desires are primarily rooted in the ego, and that's why Sri Aurobindo says, that uh, the desires start undergoing a starvation death in the absence of support from the ego. So if the ego does not support the desires start withering away. So when the desires start withering away, our actions become more and more desireless. And that is one of the important things in working from the yogic spirit. So that's how self knowledge can cut the knowledge of ego and desire, both of which are very relevant to action. Because action is normally with a desire. But when we understand, when we have self knowledge, then the ego is gone, and so are the desires. So the work becomes desireless or nishkam, you see, nishkam karma. And absence of this ego is not merely disciplined egoism, it is something absolute, uncompromising, and founded in self knowledge. Why Sri Aurobindo is emphasizing that it's not merely disciplined egoism is because that can be a step towards the cutting off the knots of the ego and desire. But at the same time, it can be an important step, because reaching the state of what is absolute and uncompromising self knowledge, it cannot be a one time event. It's a process. And therefore, we go in steps. And that is essentially what this chapter is about. It says that, well, this is absolute, but then since that is difficult to reach in one step, people try to reach it in different stages and in different ways by sacrificing different things and in different ways. So that is what many of the verses in today's discussion will be about. So normally, when we are rooted primarily in the ego, when we are an ego-centered personality, we are self-serving, which means we serve ourselves. Whereas move to total, when we move to the total self-knowledge, or the deepest knowledge, and start putting it in practice, that leads to total self-giving. Now, this is not a one-step process and comes in stages. And some of the stages are, firstly, disciplined egoism. That is, the ego is there, but we try to control it, discipline it. We don't make it very obvious, because if we make it very obvious, it is shocking to our own moral sense. We start feeling that I'm showing off. That's not a nice thing to do. And we also feel that if I show off, then I'll be too offensive to others. Others will also feel that he's showing off. So I don't want to hurt their sensibility. I do not want to have a bad image because others are judging me as offensive. And my own moral sense is also shocked by that type of showing off. And the result is that I discipline my ego. So that is disciplined egoism. And some of the names that we give to the partial discipline of the ego are duty. That, well, I'm doing it, but I'm doing it because I'm supposed to do it. It's my duty. So that sort of makes it look uh, more reasoned. It's not work that I'm doing for the sake of fulfilling a desire, for achieving a certain outcome. I'm doing it because it's supposed to be my duty, and I try to do my duty in a dedicated manner with total sincerity. So the ego is there, but I give it the name of duty. Or I say that I'm doing it because God wants me to do it, and I have submitted to God's will. So these are some of the ways in which we uh, hide our ego and discipline our ego by giving it this type of names. And that becomes more compatible with our own moral sense, and also the others are also not offended. Now, when we do it, then what happens is that uh, as a result of the work that we are doing, when the work is not going well, the outcome is not as I expect, or the work is not sufficiently rewarded, or the work is not successful, the surface may be shaken, but I start perceiving that there's something deep within me, what you may call the center, which is silent, which can never be shaken. So I becoming more and more aware of that center. And when I become that, then start extending the calm of the soul to its instruments. The instruments, that is the body and the mind. So uh, now this is the next step after a disciplined ego. I'm aware not only of my ego, but also of a deeper self, which is at a level higher than the ego. And this is always silent, no matter how noisy or shaken the surface may be, that is surface mind. And then I try and connect these instruments, that is the body and the mind, to the calm of the soul, so that I become more at peace in a genuine manner. Just as the center is silent, the surface also tends to get silent. And for this, again, just as disciplined egoism can help, help can come from philosophy. That's what the Stoic philosophy is about. Or it can come from religious exaltation. That is religious exaltation means that sort of uh, I get absorbed in a sort of sense of devotion, which is can be a part of religion. I get intoxicated by it. I get completely sort of lost in it, and this helps in uh, disciplining the ego. And I feel that now I'm doing it for a higher purpose, for a higher being, for a superior power. So, therefore, that religious exaltation can also help in going towards a total self knowledge and genuine sacrifice. And mental powers. I can use my rational intellect also to justify many of these things. And uh, that why ego control is important, why I should not be affected by the outcome, why I should be able to accept the success and failure uh, without getting upset, with equanimity. Now, all this can come also from the mental level. And finally, I discard all these props: disciplined egoism, or stoic philosophy, or religious exaltation, mental powers. I discard all these props and arrive at perfect, self existent peace. That is, peace which is inherent in the divine essence, which does not require any effort. It is that peace, it cannot be otherwise. It is self existent. Another way of looking at the stages through which we go towards total self knowledge, and that total self knowledge enlightening the action, is that to start with, work may be motivated by physical, emotional, or mental needs. But then, as we go more and more towards the yogic poise in our work, the motive becomes progressively Godward. And finally, the only motives left are God love and God service. Now, the result is that now work is enlightened by knowledge and fueled by devotion. So there's a fusion of work with knowledge and devotion. So this is a quote from Sri Aurobindo's The Synthesis of Yoga. In the end, not desire, but the consciously felt will of the eternal remains as the sole driver of our action and the sole originator of its initiative. So even the initiation of the work is because of our being conscious of the will of the eternal or the divine will. And that is what sustains the work, that is what motivates the work, that's what fuels the work. So it becomes the sole driver of the action.
ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महवि ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना.
Now, this verse, as you can see, there's Brahman everywhere repeatedly in this shloka. Brahman is the giving, the act of giving. Brahman is the one who offers. Brahman is the divine. Brahman is the food offering. The food that is being offered, that's also the divine. The one who is offering is also divine. And the fire into which it is being offered is also the divine. And this action can take us to the divine. That is, it can be an approach to the divine. But how? It becomes an approach to the divine for the one who perceives only Brahman in his actions. So one who can see throughout in this entire chain of action only Brahman, then this takes him to Brahman itself. Brahmaiva tena gantavyam, Brahma karma samadhina. Now, this was the mealtime prayer at S. Vyasa Swami Vivekananda Yoga University in Bangalore. It's used as the mealtime prayer because uh, you are offering the food to the digestive fire and fits quite well. And that can be sort of a simple way of relating it to one of the everyday experiences. And if you repeat the same mantra or shloka uh, 3 times a day, you don't have to make an effort to know it. And that's why it was said that at least this one shloka you should know. If you don't know this shloka, you can't pass the exam. Huh? So, to sort of put it in a simpler way, uh, this verse is that Brahman or the divine is the one who is offering the divine to attain the divine. Now, to be able to actually see it in this way is not easy. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says this is something which even all yogins have not attained. And therefore, what do? They try and offer uh, to other substitutes, and sometimes they offer something else rather than just the work. And all these can become different types of sacrifice.
दैवमेवापरे यज्ञं योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावपरे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति श्रोत्रादीनीन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति सर्वाणि सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतयः संशितव्रतः अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणे पानं तथा परे प्राणापानगतिरुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणाः अपरे नियताहारा प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वेप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषाः
So these verses from 25 to 30 talk about the various substitutes and compromises and alternatives which uh, people on the spiritual path use because Brahman, the divine, offering the divine to attain the divine is something even all yogins have not attained. And therefore, what do uh, many on the spiritual path actually do? They sacrifice uh, whatever they sacrifice, they offer to the gods. And we saw in one of the previous shlokas that when you offer to the gods, it's usually associated with asking for something, it's associated with a desire, and very often that desire is fulfilled. Then sometimes what is offered are the senses to the fire of control, which means you try and use self control to control the senses so that one does not get carried away by sensory pleasures, or you offer all actions motivated by desire into the fire of yoga of self control, comes essentially the same thing, but then the desire, not the senses, but the desires are being controlled in the fire of yoga, because that's what yoga is essentially about. Or some may offer material possessions, some may offer hearing and other senses. Now, what can this mean, offering hearing and other senses? One way of looking at it, possibly, I thought, could be these three monkeys, which you all know, Gandhiji's monkeys, as we call them. Don't see evil, don't listen to evil, don't speak evil. So, this is sort of a sacrifice at the level of the senses, seeing and listening, and controlling them. So, you are uh, sacrificing in these senses, and speaking also in a sense, because in the yogic sense it's not only those which give us knowledge, but also karmendriya, they are called. Those are also senses in a way. So don't speak evil. Some offer austerities, that is, they deliberately torture their body by going on prolonged fasts or subjecting themselves to extremes of cold or heat, or and so on and so forth. So some offer those austerities as sacrifice. Some offer their study and knowledge as sacrifice. And some offer the practice of some form of yoga, any school of yoga that they are following. And some pour as sacrifice prana into apana and apana into prana. Now, uh, this is again a sort of a yogic concept of in the prana being what we take in, and apana is what goes out. So they offer a sacrifice prana into apana and apana into prana, so that the two get connected, you might say. So what goes in is not only air, what goes in is also food and sensory impressions. And what goes out is not only again air, it also is whatever we eliminate from the body as leftover from food, and etc. So that it has wider implications. Some control their diet very rigidly as a form of sacrifice. And this is a pictorial representation of prana and apana. Uh, Prana is at the top. It is about taking in, and apana is the elimination at the bottom. And the picture on the right shows how the two can get connected. And of course, there are intermediate stages or steps by which they can get connected. Uh, what we take in has to be processed, and that processing is what we call samana. And then it has to be distributed, that is vyana. And then it has to be whatever is left over is eliminated, that is apana, and then the product of it is an upward movement, or something being constructed, created, and that is udana, or that is going up, flying up, taking off, udana. Now, the fire, which we call Brahmagni, may be the fire of self control, or it may be purified sense action, or vitality, that is the emotional part of the being, controlled by the life force, prana, or the fire of self knowledge, which would be, in a way, the highest. The others are intermediate steps. But what is common to all these forms of sacrifice, Sri Aurobindo has sort of simplified it for us, and sort of extracted from it what is common to all these different types of sacrifice in which people on the spiritual path may indulge. That they are all, what is common to them all is that we are subordinating the lower activities to something higher. We are diminishing the control of desire on our in our actions, and we are abandoning egoistic enjoyment that boosts our ego. And all of them involve self-giving for a higher aim. And Sri Krishna tells Arjun that no matter how people do it and what route they follow, what type of sacrifice they perform, they have all destroyed their sins through sacrifice, which means one can get liberated from sins by sacrifice.
यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम् नायं लोकोऽस्त्ययज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्यः कुरु सत्तमा एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वितता ब्रह्मणो मुखे कर्मजान् विद्धि तान् सर्वान् एवं ज्ञात्वा विमुक्ष्यसे.
So the key to enlightened action is sacrifice, and all forms of sacrifice are born of work, which means action is important to put in, to realize, to internalize what sacrifice really means. And what is left over from the sacrifice is the nectar of immortality.
श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयाद्यज्ञान् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते.
Now, here this is one of those type of passages in the Gita where Sri Krishna succeeds in confusing Arjuna and all of us, talking in favor of knowledge and talking in favor of action in the same breath, more or less. That sacrifice of knowledge is the greatest. And on the other hand, it is actions that culminate in knowledge. And the knowledge used as a sacrifice enlightens action. So that is what this verse 33 is about. So one actually can see that you cannot really separate enlightened action from knowledge, because action can be performed without much knowledge, and different degrees of knowledge will enlighten action more and more. For example, just to perform an action, one can do it without any knowledge also. You know, you might have heard of that story of people who were uh, uh, constructing a road. So they were breaking stones. So somebody asked one of the workers who was breaking these stones, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm breaking these stones for making a living." Now here there was straight away there was a action with a limited desire. There was no enlightenment with any fancy knowledge. Then the same person asked another worker, "What are you doing?" He said that I am breaking these stones so that uh, city A or town A can be linked to town B through a road. So a road will be constructed. Hmm? And that will improve the economy. Then he asked the third one, uh, "What are you doing?" He said that I'm breaking these stones because a road has to be constructed between point A and point B. That will improve the economy and also spare the poor donkeys who have to carry so much load otherwise. So then the donkeys will not have to do it. Some vehicle will take that load from A to B. Now, here you can see that the action remains the same, but it is getting more and more enlightened by knowledge. And what will be the final sort of you can say, a culmination? The one who says that I'm doing it to make a living is sort of speaking predominantly from the tamasic level. The one who says that uh, I'm contributing to construction of a road, he's speaking from the rajasic level. One who is also thinking of the donkeys being spared, he's talking of from the sattvic level. Now, the one who has gone beyond the three, how will he look at the same thing? He'll say what the sattvic person said, but then this person also knows that what I'm doing, I'm able to do because I have received the abilities to do it from the divine. The circumstances to do it have also come from the divine, and I cannot afford to be therefore attached to the outcome. The outcome is in the hands of the one who uh, has given me these circumstances and the ability, and therefore he is better prepared. Suppose for anything going wrong, suppose the road is all complete and it seems that now everything is ready, and then there is an earthquake. So in that the road is gone. So all what they did is undone by the earthquake, and in fact both in town A and B many houses collapse, and some people die and all that happens. So there's destruction in this region. Now this person who was fully enlightened with self knowledge, he's prepared for even that to happen. And now he'll see that what is the action expected of me by the divine? To engage in relief work following the earthquake. So, knowledge can enlighten action to varying degrees. Action can be performed without any knowledge, but the more it gets enlightened by knowledge, we find that more it becomes free from all the bondages associated with work. The person is no longer attached to the outcome of the work. The person does not look at himself as the doer of the work. The illusion of doership is gone, and the person is not uh, attached to a particular type of work. He doesn't show preference. He's ready to uh, break stones, and he's also ready to engage in relief work. So the preference is not there, and he's also not attached to work itself, which means that he can also see karma sometimes in akarma. So this is knowledge fully enlightened by action. So knowledge can enlighten action. At the same time, action generates knowledge, because we may start with partial knowledge, but then the experience that we gather from the action itself can generate knowledge. For example, suppose we do our work with full dedication and we find that still the work was not successful, or we do our work extremely well and yet I am not recognized and rewarded. Instead, somebody else who was not doing the work so well is recognized and rewarded. Now, initially, I get upset by all these things, but gradually, this itself becomes a means to generating more knowledge, which will help me accept all these eventualities with samatva, that is, with profound equality, that is, I'll be able to accept all these outcomes with equal delight. And that is what samatva is about, not just acceptance, but acceptance with equal delight. And why delight? Because I'll see in them opportunities for spiritual growth. So I'll see it as something which has been given to me by the divine because it was necessary for fulfilling the purpose of my life, for my spiritual growth, which is the purpose of life. So it has been given to me with a purpose. So I'll accept it as coming from the divine with prasada buddhi, all types of outcome. Now, this generation of this knowledge was because of some failures, some frustrations associated with action. So, while knowledge can enlighten action, action also generates knowledge, and this new knowledge then can further enlighten subsequent action. So, it is a chain, and that is why both are important. And knowledge enlightens action, and action generates knowledge.
Chapter 5, verse 4. Sankhya Yoga Prithak Bala Pravadanti na Panditaha Ekam Mapyasthita Samyak Ubhayorvindate Phalam.
Now, this is from the next chapter, but I brought it in particularly because when the Gita was given by Sri Krishna to Arjun, at that time, there was a tendency to look upon philosophy or Sankhya as knowledge and yoga as karma or action. And the fusion of the two was not seen so clearly, and that is what the type of synthesis that that Sri Krishna has worked out in the Gita. And ridiculing this type of a separation of Sankhya and yoga in this shloka in chapter 5, verse 4, uh, what Sri Krishna is saying is Sankhya Yoga Prithak Bala. That is, it's only children who see them as separate, Sankhya and Yoga, not the Pandits, not the learned people. So, children speak of Sankhya and yoga as separate, as different, not the wise. If a wise man applies himself integrally to one, he gets the fruits of both. And we saw how through knowledge we can enlighten action, and through action we can generate more knowledge. So if one applies oneself to one of them fully and wholeheartedly, then one can get the fruits of both. From knowledge, one can perform enlightened action, and through action, one can generate more knowledge.
सर आप पानी पी लीजिए एंड वी कैन
While
वेट.
you
हाँ वी
are, no,
कैन
no, while
वेट.
you are chanting, I'm drinking water.
यस सर प्लीज. हाँ
Thank
हम वेट कर सकते हैं आपका. हाँ
you. No, no,
ओके. हाँ यस.
thank you.
तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः.
So now uh, Sri Krishna is telling him how knowledge may be acquired. Of course, knowledge can be generated by action itself, we saw. But then having a teacher or a guru is also important. And that is why even those who did not need a guru adopted a guru. Even Sri Krishna had a guru. So, to set a good example, even the avatars have had a guru. So, now he's turning to that direction, telling him that how you can get knowledge by worshipping the teacher, not just having a teacher, but by having a sense of devotion to the teacher. And then the devotion does not mean that you can't ask questions. You can ask questions and serve the teacher.
यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि.
So, if you approach the guru properly with the and serve him, what is the knowledge one would get? That all existences without exception, that is, whatever exists, everything is in the self. And all existences without exception are in me, Sri Krishna says, because he is the divine. And self spelt with a capital S also means the divine, because the essence of the individual, whom we sometimes look at as an individual and then call that person the self with a small s, the deepest reality of that is also the divine, and then we spell it with a capital S. So all existences are in the self, and they are all in Sri Krishna, in the divine. Not only they are all in the divine is in all of them. This is uh, the beginning of the Isha Upanishad. And what says is Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Now, Vasya can have two meanings. It can mean Nivas Sthan, place where one lives. And it also mean, Vasya can also mean the Vastra, that is the one which clothes or envelops or dresses up somebody. Now, both are valid because the divine uh, resides in everything. So, everything is an abode of the divine. Hmm? So, everything is a house or a place of stay or a place where the divine lives. And same time, the divine envelops everything and everybody because the divine extends also beyond all creation. So everything that exists does not exhaust the divine. The divine exists even beyond that, and therefore all is also within the divine. So the divine dresses up, envelops, covers everything. So uh, sometimes we sum it up in all in one, that is, all that exists is actually in the one, that is, resides in the one. It is the place of the abode of the one in all. Sorry, all in one. So that envelops the one, envelops everything. One in all, the one resides in everything. And therefore, if we look at both these together, all can be seen as one. So you see, uh, ancient Indian wisdom was great at encapsulating knowledge, sort of in just a few words, Ishavasyamidam Sarvam, or translated into these three short sentences of three words each. You have, in fact, the deepest truths of existence. And in one way, you can say that if this is known, there's nothing else that remains to be known. That is one way this deep existential knowledge has been looked at. Now, what are the practical implications of it? Is it just an intellectual entertainment, all in one in all, and all as one? The practical implications are that if the one is in all of us, then it means that at a fundamental level, we are all one. And this sense of oneness should lead to love. Because whom do we love the most? The one with whom we feel connected, the one whom we feel a sense of connection. So, if we have this fundamental connection with all creation, that should inspire universal love. The second is that it should breed a sense of humility, that the divine is not only in me, but in all creation. So, I am only one small bit, a small little bit in that creation. And just imagine the vast universe, all the galaxies, and how long they have been and how long they will continue. Within that, this little life of an individual for a short period of, say, 80 years, 100 years, or whatever, that is nothing. And then on top of that, yes, the essence is divine, but the manifestation is so imperfect. So, all this, putting it in the proper perspective, breeds a sense of humility. The third thing that it does on the positive side is that it also helps us aware of our potential, because we may be imperfect manifestations of the divine, but we are not incapable of moving towards perfection, and therefore the potential is nothing short of divine perfection. And that is what union with the divine is about. That is becoming one with the divine. That is reaching the level of perfection that we associate with the divine. That is the ultimate goal of yoga. So, the practical implications, this knowledge has practical implications. Uh, this talk is part of a series in which we are taking up Gita chapter by chapter. And all these have been put in a playlist, a single playlist, the Gita chapter by chapter, on the Yes Spirituality YouTube channel. And if you scan this QR code, it will take you to that playlist. The series of talks is dedicated to my mother, in whose lap I heard the Gita for the first time. Uh, Essays on the Gita is Sri Aurobindo's commentary on the Gita, and it is truly exceptional, both as a piece of literature and as a piece of deep insight. And this is a compilation, you might say, based primarily on essays on the Gita, but also using other works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, in which you find a verse by verse translation. In the essays on the Gita, you do not have verse by verse translation. It follows roughly the same sequence as the Gita, but Sri Aurobindo has taken the liberty of going back and forth to make each essay lucid. So, the set of 48 essays, and each is a very lucid essay uh, and a delight to read. Gratitude to all the resources that we have available on the internet, which makes the preparation easier and also uh, a little more decorative, aesthetically pleasing. Gratitude to the Mother and Sri Aurobindo for making the session possible. And thank you all for being there.
Thank you, sir, for a very lucid delivery of yet another segment of the Bhagavad Gita. Today we were doing the middle portion of the fourth adhyay, and sir, it was commendable that you substantiated with small little nuggets like Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam, and you teach us small little meaning of very profound sutras like these. Participants, if you have any reflections or anything to share, you can do that now. Yes, ma'am. Natalia, you want to say something?
Yes, namaste. Thank you very much for this beautiful opportunity to connect with you, to hear the wisdom of Gita and Sri Aurobindo. I want just to express, gratitude how this beautiful information shared today really helped me in my journey. So last week I started working for a lady. Yes, she asked me to help her with her children. But at the same time, she asked me also not only to teach her children Ukrainian language, she asked me if I'm able to help her cleaning in the house, cleaning toilets. And there was a part of me that really wanted to help. And I said yes straight away, like, no problem. But I think that ego, kept telling me, like, yeah, you have 2 high degrees. Why cleaning toilets? Something like that. But today's session made it so clear to me that it's all about not only cleaning toilets, it's all about purification from that ego, and I love it so much. Thank you.
Yeah, this is one of the things which changes us in the field of yoga, that you do not have preference for work. Of
Mm,
course, I mean, uh, there is a limitation to it in the sense that time and energy are limited. And
mm,
therefore, if there's something that anybody can do, and there is something that very few people can do, and you are one of those who can do it, then with your limited time and energy, you should do what not too many others can do. So that is understandable. But very often, our preference is not based on the such considerations. It's based on what type of work we consider better, more glamorous, and so on, more prestigious, more lucrative. So very often, the preferences are based on that, and that is what yoga helps us. And of course, to keep the ego in check. And if you saw that disciplining the ego is one of the steps towards the elimination of the ego, to keep that in check, even if it is something like cleaning the toilets, and anybody can do it, and therefore we don't have to do it if we can do many other things which relatively fewer people can do. Even then, we should at least spend some time, sometimes, in doing such things.
mm,
And that's what the mother used to do when people went to Pondicherry, uh, and they asked her what work she would assign them. So very often she would assign things like washing utensils in the kitchen and things like that to very learned people.
mm,
Later on, the work could be shifted, but to start with, sometimes just to sort of help them control their ego, she would give them work which they will feel that is below their dignity. So they have to overcome that interpretation. It's not below your dignity. It's just that you can do other things, so which relatively few people can do. So you'll get that type of work.
mm. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Natalia, for a wonderful reflection. So, one of our participants wanted access to the QR code for the playlist once again. So, if it's
I can
possible
share.
to,
I
yes,
can
sir.
share the screen again.
Okay. So, participant, you had asked for the scanner to access the YouTube. This is the scanner. Um, it's a Pradeep Kumarji wants to ask a question. Yes, Pradeep Kumarji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, Hello, Bijlani sir. Namaskar.
Hello.
Yeah.
Namaskar.
Yeah, so it was very enlightening talk. So one thing came to my mind. You mentioned about confusing words about action and karma and the wisdom. But one verse came to my mind is this verse number 37 from chapter 5, which where Krishna says that in the fire of wisdom, all actions can be burned. So I am just confused now, actually. So how do you correlate this?
When we say the actions can be burnt or dissolved,
Uh,
essentially it comes to the same thing.
uh,
And if one goes deeper, one would find that we are just looking at the same thing from different angles,
okay.
whether it is through sacrifice or through knowledge. Uh, uh, each of these is essentially looking at the same thing in different ways. And the root remains the true self knowledge, or the deepest truths of existence, or the highest truth as seen in spirituality. So that remains the fundamental thing. Then, it can be given different way angles from which it may be looked, but essentially it remains that. And when that happens, then uh, the work is burnt or dissolved, in the sense that the work is done, but it doesn't stick. The way, I mean, Sri Krishna says that I
Uh,
also work, but I'm not affected by the work.
okay. Oh, yeah. Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your question. Thank you, sir. Participants, I'd like to share that the recording of this session today, as well as all the previous Gita sessions, are uploaded on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. And this session also will be uploaded within a few days. Thank you, everyone, for being here today with us and for enlightening this wonderful space. Thank you so much, sir, for illuminating our 60 minutes and a lot more, illuminating our life with your beautiful presence and knowledge. We would like to wrap up the session with a moment of peaceful silence.